going as well. All right, we got the YouTube rolling here. Get this tweeted out and we can go. All right, that's good. Let's go. Hello there, and welcome to the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast here on HawkFanatic.com. You are not going crazy. It's Scott Docterman and I in the afternoon instead of the morning on Thursday. And as luck would have it, we got breaking news. And usually it's after we sign off that the news breaks. So maybe the world was telling us we should be recording this later in the day today. But if you're watching us on YouTube, you can see Scott with NFL logos in the background. He is in Indianapolis at the NFL Scouting Combine, and we certainly will talk about that. But Caitlin Clark has made her decisions, and I think I'm not going to say it was the right decision because it was up to her, whatever she wanted to do and what she felt was best for her. But I see this beneficial on a lot of levels in the long term and the short term. Short term, she gets to be honored the right way on Sunday against Ohio State. Everybody knows that's her last regular season game. She'll probably have two more home games for the NCAA tournament, but she doesn't have to be asked the question anymore. And there's clarity here, and she can focus on the task at hand, which is trying to lead this team to a national championship. How are you?
I tell you what, mentally, I've just been juggling about 15 things in the last hour, since this news broke. And then to top it off, I'm here at the Combine writing about the most popular sport, although sometimes it's debatable, at least in Iowa right now with women's basketball. But obviously the topic at hand in Iowa part of the world isn't Cooper DeJean, and whether it's a fair catch or not, which he reiterated that it wasn't.
It's connected to Iowa women's basketball. Now that Taylor McCabe tweeted that out last night.
Exactly.
So, all the worlds collide, Scott.
And last night I went over to the Pacers and the Pelicans game, and I took a picture of it up there and just and tweeted it out, and I said, I'm at the Indiana Fever's co-tenant tonight. So, you throw all that in there and all those elements, and it's just really an amazing thing. I mean, last night it was probably 2/3, 3/4 full. Kind of fun to watch an NBA game up close, but Caitlin Clark will take this city by storm, and if they trade the rights, they'll never hear the end of it. It's like trading the rights to John Elway or Peyton Manning, But what's kind of been your sense of gauging the news from fans, very quickly, the quick knee-jerk reaction?
I think they're like all these decisions, Scott, whether it be, Hawkeye football or the Murrays, Keegan and Chris. I mean, we've been through this a lot lately with Cooper this year.
Yeah.
People hoping that he would find it in his heart to come back one more year and wear the black and gold. And I think there was a certain element of that in the fan base. I don't know if you sense this, that people were like, oh, she could come back and maybe make give her chance itself another chance at a run and raising the numbers and the records and things like this. But I think we've talked about it on this podcast. She seems like she's ready for a new challenge. And I think the fans understand that. And it brings the Iowa brand now outside of the state borders. You're in Indianapolis. The excitement there. I'm sure you're going to see and feel it a lot here now. The Indiana Fever tweeted out a link to the season tickets that are coming up for this season. Yeah. So I think it's a natural step for her. And I think that when the Iowa fans look at it that way and kind of pull out their self-interest, I think they understand that she's ready for the next step. And unfortunately for Darren Ravel, he seems to step in it every chance that he gets in these situations. The nonsense that she's going to lose money because of this is just that's what it is. It's nonsense.
She's never taken any money from the collective.
No,
It's all been outside the collective. I mean, her Nike money, her Gatorade, her State Farm, her Bose, Hy-Vee, that's never came through the collective. So that's what I've tried to describe, and I've had a few people on my staff reach out to me about that, is that, she's going to be able to take all those brands and that exposure with her to the WNBA. She's
a brand. She's a brand.
She's the brand. She will take her star to the WNBA. They will not make her a star. Now, she can help make that league relevant and important. We talked about that. And I think that's really a big deal. But, I would just say a couple of things here that comes off of my mind. First, we've been through countless senior days, Rob, and they're all emotional to their own level, and for us, we become attached to these athletes. We get to know them as young people, and then they leave as adults. We see them change as human beings over the years, Rob. This will be the most impactful senior day that I've ever witnessed, because it contains the most important and the best athlete in Iowa sports history. And I'm done with that debate. It's Caitlin Clark first, as far as being an athlete at Iowa. And therefore, when you have her, and then you also combine the other players and how important they are to Iowa women's basketball, which is a brand in itself right now, that it will be the most impactful, even over some of the football ones that have been there. And so I think about that first. And then the second part is, this has got to be incredibly liberating for her. I've heard this decision was more stressful to her than actually going after these records, because she does have a deep and abiding love for Iowa, and she knows what the sport means and what it, in the future. So now that she's made her decision, she can just let it go. And now it's all about playing free, and she'll have an amazing celebration of her career on Sunday, and whether they win or lose. And then the NCAA the Big Ten tournament, the NCAA tournament at home, that'll be it. And then, whatever happens the rest of the way in the NCAA tournament. So what an amazing career. Something we've never witnessed before. And, I said it after Megan Gustafson left, but I'll say it again. Eat my words if I have to. And we'll never see her like again.
No, it's a phenomenon. It's transcendent. It's all those words, historic. I mean, what she did. She's had back-to-back triple doubles here in the last week. I mean, it's just, you can see though. I can kind of sense with her that the spotlight is. She's feeling it now. You can kind of see that it's everywhere. She goes to Williams Arena last night, and it's just, she's mobbed after the game. And I'm not saying that played in her decision to move on to a bigger fishbowl in Indianapolis, but I do sense that there's a lot of pressure on her right now, as you said, with the records and the talk and the interview request and all of that stuff. And by the way, if you're looking to get into Carver Hawkeye Arena this Sunday, I just looked it up on SeatGeek. It's going to cost you a minimum of $335 a seat. That's $335 a seat. Those are for the cheap seat. Yeah. They go up significantly from there. I imagine they're not going to go down now that the news is out that this is her senior day. If anything, we're going to go up. And like you said, it's going to be a great celebration in Carver Hawkeye Arena for a woman that's helped fill that arena and change the landscape of athletics, not only in this state, but just college athletics overall. And it'll be neat, Scott, to see her spread her wings. And I'm just intrigued and fascinated to see what she can do for a professional league after what we've seen, what she's done for college athletics.
That's going to be the most interesting part of this. I mean, globally, locally, regionally, we've seen how she's filled these arenas all around the Big Ten. She's filled the arenas, obviously, in Iowa for a long time with her logo threes and being able to be on. I mean, like the graphic that came out from the Big Ten, that Iowa now has the highest rated game on 6 networks in women's basketball history. And and that was ABC last year in the Big Ten or the NCAA championship. And they're going to be on ESPN, in this tournament, ESPN/ABC. So there's a possibility that they could even go higher with that. So what she can do at the next level is take that popularity at a time of year where it's beyond what we've seen here. So it's really kind of amazing. I don't know. I think, there will be all the same groups of young girls, but also women and fans coming to Indiana Fever games just to get a piece of it, and then going on the road when they travel, and just to watch her play. And if the WNBA plays this right and embraces her and elevates her, then I think this is something that it will turn that league from being third world, basically, of sports into close to maybe at MLS level or higher, maybe even NHL level higher. And that's something that we've never seen before, and could be a godsend to not only to basketball first, women's basketball, and then kind of trickle down from there.
And Sunday she goes in, I think, 17 points shy of Pistol's record. So you've got that coming into play also this Sunday. In addition to the senior day, she's got college game day in town in the morning. And then the game itself is on Fox. And then she has a chance to set the all-time major college scoring record held by Pistol Pete Maravich. It's just, it doesn't end, Scott. It's just, it's like she's gotten to that point now where every game is a huge national event.
Yeah, it was already going to be an electric, crazy environment with game day there. I mean, we knew how everything was going to be with the senior day. I mean, you got number 2 versus number 6 in the country. And the possibility for it being Caitlin's last name. Now it is. And you've got, oh, by the way, she could score more points than any major college basketball player in the history of the sport. I mean, how lucky are we going to be able to cover this event? So overall, Rob, there's just nothing like this. And it's a moment that we need to cherish. And I think Iowa fans should cherish, which I expect that they will. But I don't know. I mean, I guess we can get in at 8, so I think I'm probably have to get in at 8 to make sure I'm there in time, like football times.
I'm thinking about delaying my arrival so I get there after everybody else is in there. The only risk there is not having a parking spot when I actually get to Carver, which has been an issue this year, where I've had to park like up on embankments and stuff to get in to see her play. But 3 more home games likely. She gets at least 1 more guaranteed. They should host the first 2 rounds, and we'll see how that shakes out as well. It's kind of cool too. The kind of the angle that a few years ago, where people were arguing over who was the player of the year, her or Aaliyah Boston. Aaliyah Boston has really done so well, not only in the league, but with her, her studio presence on Peacock. She's been super she was the studio, one of the studio commentators last night for the game at Minnesota, which was cool. It would have been cool if she knew at that point that she was going to be Caitlin's teammate. But man, can you as much as people love the logo threes and her ability to fill it up, she may average 20 assists a game in the WNBA, with some of the Aaliyah being one of them. But I mean, with WNBA pro players having the ability to catch the passes that maybe some of her college teammates can't, her assist numbers could be astronomical.
I've estimated that at minimum one fourth of her turnovers have been the result of her teammates being unable to catch her passes. And even though they're on the mark, they're either a little bit hard for them, or they're just not equipped to doing it. I mean, and I would say Aaliyah Boston is equipped to doing that. We know how good she was at South Carolina, how good she is now, and frankly, she's fantastic on television too. And I remember when they had a conversation together, and Aaliyah, and I think even Caitlin at that time said, yeah, we might be teammates or something like that. And I think that's pretty funny. But, her passing ability is like that of an NFL quarterback. I mean, watching Tyrese Halliburton last night make some throws, passes, I'm like, okay, yeah, I've seen this before. And it's from her. And 17 triple doubles. She had another one last night. They only set the record, Rob, for most 3-pointers in a game. I mean, and she set the single season record for 3-pointers, and I mean, all these records are just like, you can't keep track of them because there are just so many of them. And, the modern, breaking any kind of semblance of the women's record now with Lynette Woodard getting, passing her up. I'm anxious to see her at the next level. Competitively, this is the right move. She's done everything she's been asked to do. I mean, she's dominating the sport currently. What's she going to do next year? And then how do you fit personality-wise, chemistry-wise? How much growth are you stunting with people like Taylor McCabe? Granted, Caitlin Clark, you take over everybody, but there's some sort of level of fairness there. I think that it's the right move, and most fans should accept that. And next look is, wow, celebrate this career, because we've seen some great ones, Rob. Luka Garza, Megan Gustafson, 10, I think since 2014, there's been 10 unanimous or first-team All-Americans in football. The Murray brothers being first-round draft picks, yet she stands alone. She is the face of Mount Rushmore when it comes to Iowa athletics.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those instances where the folks that get a chance to see her play can share with future generations and future people, fans of the sport, what it was like to watch her in person and cover her and get to see this growth and what she's become. And not to be TMZ or Entertainment Tonight, or if that's still a thing, but it also probably doesn't hurt that her boyfriend works for the Indianapolis or for the Indiana Pacers as well, which I don't know if that's where his future is going to be, but that's also helpful too. And, she's got to think about her life too. And she's 22. I think she's ready to spread her wings and look, like you said, I look forward to seeing her play at the next level. And I look forward to seeing maybe what not having people ask her that question and not having that added pressure along with all the other things kind of frees her up now to make the run that this team has been waiting for. Because no matter what happened this regular season, Big Ten regular season championship, Big Ten tournament championship, everybody's been waiting for the NCAA tournament after this team made it to the finals last year. Can it do it again? And now really that's the story. What's the last chapter of her career at Iowa? We're about to find out.
Yeah, that's the most exciting part of it. And I do think that, I mean, let's take this conversation to a regular person, not Caitlin Clark. And you're a 4-year student, you're ready to graduate. Do you want to stay in college, even if all your stuff's paid for, or do you want to go to the next level, and get a real job or whatever? And in some ways you look at it and go, yeah, it's time to move on. You're going to miss college And college is a fun experience, especially in Iowa City, which is one of the greatest college towns in the country. And you could, make the case that it's the best, and I wouldn't disagree with you. But it's time to move on a little bit. And I think, she's basically been a pro for 3 years. Been a pro in not only how she's played, but how she's been treated and how recognizable she is. I mean, she can't go to the Coral Ridge Mall and decide, I'm going to go shopping today. I'm going to go there. No, she can't do any of that. I mean, she get mobbed, and she has to sit, on campus. She pulls her hood up and walks around. In games, she sits there, and I don't know about Connor's connection to the Pacers because. I mean, I see him at Carver every day practically. So
I talked to him a few weeks ago. He does what he's really good at. He breaks down video.
Oh, does he?
So he can kind of do that remotely. He's there a lot too, but he can do that remotely. So, and I'm sure he wants to move up the organizational ladder too. So it works out.
Yeah.
Life has a way of working it out.
Right. Well, either way, whether it's in Indianapolis for him or around here, I've always thought very highly of his basketball mind, and I think he'll be an outstanding coach, whatever track he decides to take, if this is just a temp or what. But with Caitlin, she's got another month-ish, left, and now this is probably, again, pretty liberating for her to be able to, all right, now I don't have, she'll have to answer the question the next time she talks. And then it's it, and then she can worry about basketball, worry about Iowa. And I remember when she broke the record against Michigan, I know I asked her afterwards, I said, now do you feel good that people are going to ask about Iowa and that's going to be the topic? And she's like, I can't wait, it's just, because it's something that, now it's about Iowa basketball, and whether they beat Ohio State or not, or they win the Big Ten championship tournament or not, now that's the main focus, not Caitlin Clark and her decision and the like.
Ohio State was able to clinch the regular season title, so Sunday's game will not be for that, but it's a chance for Iowa to separate from Indiana, get that second seed, set itself up for, because at this point you're just playing to stack wins and improve your NCAA tournament seed. I'm sure Iowa would love to win the Big Ten tournament up in Minneapolis, and certainly will be one of the favorites to do that. So, and I think it'd be remiss of us not to mention that although they've gone through a senior day already, for Gabby Marshall and Kate Martin, two of her better friends that are moving on and wouldn't be with her next year, then I'm sure that's something that she thought about. But Sunday's a celebration of Caitlin, but also a nucleus of players that have helped this team reach great heights. So it's going to cost you to get in there, but if you can at least watch it on TV.
When you throw Gabby Marshall, Kate Martin, Molly Davis out there,
Davis too, yes.
By themselves, those three would be a traditional, wonderful senior day, because they are as beloved as Caitlin is. I mean, everybody respects Caitlin's basketball prowess, but when you go through and you see, people in the arena, they're wearing grit like Gabby and, happy like Hannah, although she's still got a couple of years left, but, the glue, Kate Martin and Molly Davis's headband and all this other stuff. I mean, they are ultra popular. And so they are going to have rousing cheers, and it's a celebration for them. And then you throw on, the GOAT, and we don't use that term lightly here. She's the GOAT, like she's like the GOAT that ruined the Cubs in '45, except she loves the Cubs.
She can come back next season too and see her jersey raised to the rafters as well.
Yeah. So, I'd actually brought it up before to some people in there about her getting, a number retired and all that. And they know that, that's going to happen, and they may promise it, but they're not going to do it. They're going to wait until she can come back, because, they want everybody to come buy tickets in the future,
It's all about business.
Yeah, well, and it makes perfect sense. I mean, I don't know what what kind of ticket sales they'll have next year. My guess is they'll still be pretty high. I don't know about sellouts, but people have latched onto this program and they love this program and the people there. But I think that the fans will, but if Caitlin Clark is coming back Tuesday night for Iowa, Indiana, and to have her jersey raised to the rafters, you don't think that people will, all right, I'll buy a ticket to that game,
Yeah, no doubt. And, it'll be interesting to see how this team does from a basketball standpoint moving forward. We've seen kind of some hiccups here later in the season, but against good teams, and we all know it's just a matter, you got to get hot at the right time. It's about matchups too. Who's going to be in their side of the bracket? All of those things are going to be, picked over, analyzed, and then we'll get to see what happens there when they do get to the madness of March. And now everybody knows that this is the last run for Caitlin. So I think they'll soak it up even more. Now there's going to be even a greater appreciation for what she's done, and this being her swan song, for lack of a better cliche.
Yeah. And I wonder if the Indiana Fever will be the most popular team in Iowa now. It was the Minnesota Lynx, right? That was her favorite team growing up. So now it's going to be the Indiana Fever. And we're, again, I think we're privileged in some ways to be able to cover her and her career. I've along the way, I've tried to make sure to continue to give props to Megan Gustafson because I don't want to see her overshadowed. She was a fantastic player and even better person. So, and she'll be in the WNBA. She's in Las Vegas this year. So that will be kind of fun to see. But the next ride will be this next couple of weeks, Rob, will be something else. And you know what? I'm also glad for them that after the Big Ten tournament, no matter what happens, that they do get a little bit of a break before they, it might be 2 weeks until they play again at home, because this has been a taxing season mentally for them. They are the rock stars of college basketball. Every game is sold out, which is something that they're incredibly proud of. It should be, but it's also all that attention on Caitlin Clark. And even when she's on the road, she's got little kids screaming at her to, just holding up signs. Like last night, wasn't it like a family from Alberta, Canada, from Calgary that was there? I mean, it's like, holy cow, that's a lot to do. And then, but she never disappoints anybody. I mean, they may lose a game. They lost to Nebraska on the road. They lost to Indiana, which Indiana's a good team, and you play on the road in the Big Ten, men's or women's basketball, those games happen. But she doesn't have like a 9-point game. she doesn't go 3 for 30. She's, worst game she's got is like a 24-point game. And oh, by the way, she had a triple double in that game, the other day against Illinois. And last night was an epic win, an epic beatdown of the Gophers. And Taylor McCabe, put the exclamation point on it with her tweet last night.
Yes, and we'll be able to talk about Sunday's game, and then we'll be able to look at the Big Ten tournament on next week's podcast. But we're going to move on now and talk a little men's hoops real quick. Speaking of triple doubles, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, Scott, until the other night. I had no idea. I figured. Somebody asked me on the Mailbag podcast, who am I most surprised didn't have a triple-double before Peyton Sanford did it the other night? And I always start with Sonny Lester.
Yeah.
Sonny Lester didn't do it. Nobody can do it. So but think about it's usually a point guard, right? Like a Jeff Horner, maybe an Adam Haluska has that ability to do that. You go back to Andre Woolridge, B.J. Armstrong. Right. There's a list of guys that weren't able to do what Peyton did the other night, and that was really cool. Couldn't have happened to a nicer kid, just a tremendous kid who I think that triple-double legitimizes what he's become, Scott. When he got here, he was the shooter. He was the guy he was the three-point shooter. He was the outside guy. He has worked his ass off to develop a well-rounded game, and the other night, he was rewarded by showing people that he is more than just a shooter.
Yeah, and all the points came from an incredible performance at the free throw line.
Yeah.
But to be able to be a well-rounded player, to be able to get all those rebounds and then distribute the way he did on offense, really shows how much, as you said, how much his game has changed. And he's got one more element to go before I think he's as complete player as he could, and that's probably a little bit better defense. But across the board, he's one of the 15 best players in the Big Ten in my eyes, no question. And to do what he did the other day, and the way this team is kind of is elevated and has played much better. I would say they're 3-1 over the last 4. The one they lost at Illinois, a good team at a place that they rarely win at, and they played for 35 minutes. They played even basketball. Just kind of dissipated late. I think this team's ascending at the right time, and am I off my rocker here when I think that this might be Fran's best coaching job? Because this team had nothing. This team was like warm jello at the beginning of the year. They didn't have a Chris Murray, a Keegan Murray, a Luka Garza, Joe Wieskamp, whatever. They didn't have like a bellwether player. They had to develop it from scratch, from in an organic fashion. They had pieces, of course, but Ben Krikke was new. Peyton Sanford had been a hot and cold role player. Tony Perkins had been good, but he wasn't really the man. And Josh Dix, of course, we know was still, last year he played sparingly and at times, and Owen Freeman's a freshman, and Patrick McCaffrey's been up and down with injuries and the like. So you're just kind of waiting. And then the first part of this season, they didn't look like any kind of part of a postseason team or a team even with a winning record. And they put themselves in this position to be within, really having a shot now. I'm not saying that they're there, but they have a shot that if they win their last 2 games and do something maybe in the Big Ten tournament, and that could be just one game, I think this team might be able to sneak into the NCAA tournament. That's a hell of a coaching job in my eyes.
Yeah, got to finish the task, as you said. But, I mean, I think if you would have told people back in December, Scott, maybe even after the Iowa State game, and how disconnected this team looked, hey, the calendar's going to turn to March, and you're on the bubble. You got a chance to win your way in down the stretch. And Iowa does. They've got 2 quad 1 games remaining at Northwestern. Then they get a week off, and then they've got Illinois here for Senior Day. I think most people would have taken that. I wasn't. I tried to remain patient in terms of making a judgment on the team. I know a lot of people were really pissed in December and were like, this season's a throwaway. But to Fran's credit, to his assistants' credit, and to the guys' credit, they figured out how to work within the roles and evolve. As you said, Owen Freeman and Josh Dix weren't starters at the beginning of the season. They've turned out to be 2 of the better players on the team and figured out how to work. Patrick McCaffrey's had struggles. We know he has struggles off the court, but he's figured out a way to carve out a role of being a solid bench player. It's just to watch it come together is kind of cool. You look at the dichotomy of the women's team and how high the expectations are, and they've been able to hold that and stay in the top 10 and be one of the better teams in the country. But then you have the other side of the men's team watching growth and improvement of guys we didn't know what they could be to do that. They're both really rewarding in different ways.
Yeah, for sure. Because you can't have the same expectations for both teams. I mean, one team was in the NCAA tournament or NCAA championship game last year, and they returned the best player in the sport and another group of solid people. I mean, their expectations are to go back. The men, not only were they one and done in the tournament, they won 19 games last year, and that was it. They were 19-14. They lost, 2 really important players, I would say. Chris Murray, first-round draft pick. You can't minimize that. And the other one is Connor McCaffrey, who for 6 years was really the glue to that team. I mean, he did so many things, and yes, scoring wasn't really a part of it. So what? But whether it was assist to turnover ratio, it was instilling toughness and discipline. He was like a coach on the court. He did all the right things, and I think that's something that you can't minimize. And so when you deal with so when you take those things out and you look at the team, I mean, objectively going into this year, to be in this spot is about as good as you could possibly have hoped for, realistically. And then, the frustrating part, Rob, was, they started 0-3, and that Michigan loss is hellacious. It's just gross. But everybody loses a stinker once in a while. And, and then they climbed their way back in. But the up, down, wins, loss, win, loss, win, loss. That was hard. And losing winnable games like Maryland and, that in Indiana on the road and Penn State on the road. But here they are. They're still battling. They haven't given up. They're working and they're getting better, and you can see it. So I think there's a lot of positives here.
Yeah, no doubt. Saturday, that's at Northwestern, 4:30. That's going to be a tough one. Northwestern has been really good at home, but the Wildcats are dealing with some key injuries. So not that you hope anybody misses the game, but that could benefit Iowa if Northwestern is shorthanded. And as we said, a week off, get a shot at Illinois at home on Senior Day. I think that's the last game of the regular season in the Big Ten. That's a Sunday night game, isn't it?
It is. And, that's happened a few times. Remember over there, right? It was like the last real game before COVID.
Yeah.
That they, Luka missed that shot at the buzzer, to beat him, so I don't know. I like it. I mean, because when you talk about basketball rivalries historically, this is as good as it gets in this league. I mean, Indiana Purdue is because of proximity and prominence of the programs, but there's always been a hate attached to Iowa, Illinois, and they and I think that's really a great way to end the season. Although I am a little bit skittish on what Iowa fans may chant at Terrence Shannon when they get there.
Yes, hopefully there are people in the asses in the seats to chant. Hopefully the students show up. Maybe Iowa can do something to kind of entice people to come and fill that place, because that would be very cool to see. Scott, I looked it up. Iowa dropped actually 2 spots since overnight from 59 to 61, and that you're going to see fluctuations like this time of year, because it's important to realize this isn't happening in a vacuum. It's not just what Iowa's doing, it's what other teams are doing. But Iowa is dead middle of the Big Ten. They're 7th in the RPI among Big Ten, or RPI. I keep doing that. The net among Big Ten teams. The net and the controversy there, the Big 12, that's a discussion for another day. We're not going down that road. We don't have enough time in the podcast to do that. They're using the net. It's whether you like it or not. Iowa is in position, though. I see a lot of bracketologists have 6 teams in for the Big Ten. So really, Iowa is that next team if it can continue to build its resume over the next week and a half. Then probably need to get at least 1 in the Big Ten tournament, perhaps 2, depending on how these last 2 games go. You get a split, you're probably going to need 2 in the Big Ten tournament. You win 2, you're probably going to need 1. Probably 3 wins, get to that 20 win plateau.
Yep.
See, let the chips fall where they may. But again, you can't control what else is going on. You got to take care of your own business.
Yep, that's where it is to me. It's if they can go 11-9 in the Big Ten, and they're the 7th seed, probably, maybe 6th.
I think they could get up to 6 if they win the 2 last regular season games,
and then beat the 10 or 11 seed, depending if you're 6th or 7th. Then I think that's your ticket. Maybe it's Dayton, but I think you get in.
Yeah.
If they split, then I think you're going to have to get an upset because, let's face it, going to Northwestern is probably going to be an upset if they win. Illinois is a really good team. They're ranked, I don't know what they're ranked now, but, they were ranked 12th. And so, they're going to have to beat a good team to get there. At least 2 good teams, and then they prove that they're worthy, and I think they're getting to 20, winning 3 games to 20 gets them in the tournament. Otherwise, Rob, I do think that they are in the NIT, and I think at the minimum, and that's not the worst thing either. When you have a team like this that's, again, young, inexperienced in certain positions, you're working through things. Now, the NIT is, not glorious, not glamorous, but it's not the worst thing for a team like this. And now I don't know if the fans will respond the way they have in the past, but you never know. And but just to play postseason basketball, I think has shown growth, and that's a nice spot because there was a lot of uncertainty for a long time.
Yeah, no doubt. It's good that it's nice to know that, basketball fans, the University of Iowa, men's and women's, are all still engaged right now going into March. And that's what you want. That's the goal at the end of the day, is to be, there are plenty of programs and athletic departments around the country that would like to be in Iowa's position right now as it pertains to basketball. That's something to hang your hat on. Want to let fans know that support for this podcast comes from Systems Unlimited, celebrating 50 years of providing services to people living with disabilities and mental health needs throughout East Central Iowa. A list of their services and upcoming events can be found at sui.org. That is sui.org. Thank you to Systems Unlimited. Great work in the community for over half a century. Certainly appreciate their support of the podcast. We're going to hear from a few more of our supporters now. Scott and I will be back shortly on the other side. Hang in there. And we're back. Scott, I don't know if anybody ever told you this, but switching is easy. We do it all the time. We switch on the lights. We switch TV channels. Some of us switch partners while square dancing. Well, that's a stretch. But what's not a stretch is how you can switch and save with State Farm. In fact, State Farm agent Chad Birch right here in Iowa can switch you over so you can start saving today. Chad and his team are ready to welcome you to the State Farm neighborhood. With Chad Birch, it's easy to switch and save. Just give him a call. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. So Caitlin has her sponsorship with State Farm. The Hotspot podcast now has its sponsorship with State Farm. So again, it's all connected. It's symbiotic, whatever that word is. We're doing this all together. It's Iowa nice.
Yeah, what did Sting call it? Synchronicity?
Yes, that's it. All right. As you can tell, I'm not as sharp later in the day. That's why I do podcasts in the morning. But I did get 2 reads in there in like a few minutes. So I'm pretty proud of myself for that. Scott, let's get to what Scott is doing. And he is in Indianapolis at the NFL Draft Combine. Correct me if I'm wrong. You've had access to Logan Lee and Cooper DeJean so far. And
Eric All. So, yeah, I've had 3 out of the 4 Iowa players in 2 days, and I'm juggling a lot of different things. But I did write about Cooper DeJean today because he's a first rounder, and there's a lot of discussion about him. And the nice thing I've seen about Logan Lee is that I think he's got a chance to get drafted. I wasn't so sure about that going before, but he had a really nice workout apparently at the Shrine Bowl. He's had some formal and informal meetings here.
Did he test today?
Today's their testing, so it could be. Oh, if you look over the shoulder, that these guys are on television. They're not. They're just
Robinson.
Down. Yeah,
I saw Chop Robinson in the back there.
Yeah, I talked to him the other day too, but about Penn State stuff. But yeah, this is so being here, we're just a stone's throw from Lucas Oil Stadium where they're conducting everything, which I could go to, but I don't think I'm going to today. But overall, it's been an interesting ride. I mean, again, starting with Logan Lee, he does look like there's a market for him, and at about 285. He wants to get to 290. He thinks he'll be there by the time for Iowa's pro day in a couple of weeks. He's been discussed anywhere from a 3 tech to a 5 tech, which is basically inside defensive tackle in a 4-3 or defensive end in a 3-4. That seems to be about right for him. We know Logan. I mean, there's character-wise, there's very few people better than him. They're going to draft him. They're going to get a solid citizen, a tough player, a good guy in the locker room, and so what you see is what you get. And I think that's going to help him land with the team and probably stick with the team for a little while. Cooper today it was fascinating, to talk to him about the breakdown of why he decided to leave. And he had the opportunity. He said he grew up in, we all know that story. He grew up in small Iowa and really, loved Iowa, but, ultimately he had to do what was best for him. And if you're a first-round draft pick, it's really hard to turn that down. I mean, that money is not free. You can't. With Caitlin, it was probably a little one way. I mean, she could still come back and be the first overall pick. But let's say he tears an ACL, and you don't get paid for it, and then you're starting to deal with other stuff. So in his case, he had to come, and he's met with around 20 teams, formally, and so there's a lot there for him. And
what has he had health-wise, Scott?
He has just started running full speed again. That was last week. He is not working out here, and he will not work out at Iowa's pro day. He will wait and have like a private workouts closer to the draft, because it's one thing to be back and be cleared, which he is, and healthy and running again. It's another thing to put yourself in a position to where you're sprinting, and want to be under 4 seconds. And it's like, well, now maybe you're at 4.5 because you're still working your way back. Whereas, in a couple of weeks, and for a cornerback or a defensive back, that's millions of dollars difference.
Yeah, he's been out for almost 5 months, hasn't he? Been unable to go full speed 4 or 5 months. Yeah.
I mean, because he broke his leg in mid-November, had surgery right after that. It was the week of the Illinois game. And, that's what, 3 months. 3.5 months. So it's been a while, and then now he's back working out, and it's still February, but March he'll be working out, and I'm sure he'll be at Iowa's pro day, but there's no need for him to rush into that. But there are some fascinating debates with Cooper that have happened here. One is there hasn't been a white cornerback start since 2002 in Jason Sehorn. And he's got that opportunity. So the question was posed of him a couple of times, and he didn't feel real comfortable answering it at all. And then there's the discussion of, well, is that part of the push for him to go to safety? Well, it's also his build. I mean, we see him. He's 6'1", 205, thick build, physical build, and that kind of looks more like a safety than a straight up corner. And it's also about certain teams. Some teams want a linear, long cornerback with long arms, who can, turn and, have more quickness and what have you. And then there's other, and then there's other guys.
Riley Moss, right? He's built differently than Riley Moss.
Yeah, absolutely. Riley Moss, or if Amir Smith-Marset would have stayed at corner, that sort of thing. But then there's other teams, I think of like the Detroit Lions. He could play a versatile role, play in multiple positions like he did at Iowa, because he was a cash, and then he'd play corner, and they actually earmarked him for safety early on, but he was too athletic for that, at least at Iowa. But, so he can do a lot of different things. There's going to be teams writing him off because they're going to say, we kind of think he's more of a safety and we don't want to draft a safety there. And then there's going to be other teams who can look at him and go, oh yeah, that guy can play multiple positions for us, and let's not put him in a role just yet. Let's give him some time. And then, oh, by the way, he's also the best punt returner in the draft. There's not a close second.
Yeah, and that's, with a 53-man roster, when you get, the ability to have somebody, whether it's an offensive lineman that can shift to different positions, or, skill player that can work in returns, that's adds value to it. And I think that's probably a big reason why he's pushed into the first round, is because he can fill multiple roles really well.
Yeah, I mean, tremendous athlete, as we know, and it's kind of weird and almost a tad bit of a shame. Although Iowa football has done this to so many different teams over the years, it's not that bad. But this is something that normally would be his day to kind of shine, probably in the state. But Caitlin Clark's overshadowing that again, which. Again, football has tended to overshadow everybody else over the years, so maybe it's payback. But
knowing Cooper, he probably doesn't care.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't care at all. But he's a good kid. He's here. He's going to make a good impression on somebody's going to get a steal, because there's going to be all that height, weight, length teams, and somebody's going to get drafted over him, some cornerback who's going to fail, and then he's going to go out and, at the bare minimum, he's going to be a solid upper level starter in the league, a gunner on the punt team, and a high quality punt returner. I mean, as good as Charlie Jones is and was, I think he's better than him as a punt returner, and that's saying a lot, because Charlie was outstanding.
Eric All's an interesting case, Scott. I think, obviously you could say you could be interviewing Luke Lachey this week had he not gotten injured. I think the hype around Eric would have been much greater had he not gotten hurt, because in that small he switched programs and was producing right away in the new pro. Now, granted, the Iowa program is very friendly to tight ends, I've heard.
Yeah.
I think he could have really improved his stock had he been able to stay on the field this year. Does it feel like teams recognize that and feel like there's something there? He seems like a guy who could be a steal in this draft.
Yeah, he was on one of the main stages. He had reporters all around him, and it was a good 20 minutes of interviews, and nothing, it wasn't like you're looking for something to ask. Lord knows we didn't get a chance. Usually I like to come here and ask about, what do you think about Luke Lachey, that type of thing, but we didn't get a chance to do any of that. So it seems to be an active market for him. He says he feels fine. He's good, but ACL isn't just one that you go, all right, let's go out and test it. I guess he could try, but
what's his timeline? Did you get a feel for his timeline for when he'll be ready to get back on the field?
He was a little less deliberate than Cooper was. So I don't know that it's, my guess is you try to be there by training camp, because it was October last year when he got hurt, and he said he wasn't sure if he was going to work out at pro day. I think his agent probably, skipped a beat and started coughing when he said that. He's not ready for that. But I think he's probably, to me, he's the type of guy that it's like draft and stash. If you've got, when the compensatory picks come out and you've got 4 between rounds 5 and 6, and you're, let's say, the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's like, let's draft this guy, put him on the PUP list and work him as much as we can until he's fully healthy and cleared, and then see what we got. And then, so the first year might be a waste, but you might have a good player for a long time. It's just the ACL happened at the wrong time. I think there's a lot of legitimacy there, because he is an athletic specimen, no question. And one of the things I thought was most fascinating when I talked, not today, but previously, was learning Iowa's blocking technique is not easy. And Michigan's was completely different for him. It was more about walling guys off. Iowa's run and hit, technically sound. And it's like, once I learned it, I liked it, but it took a while to get the technique down, and your backside knee is aimed at the crotch of your opponent, and you've got to hit and turn and move and displace, and That's not the way a lot of teams coach tight ends to block. So, but his pass catching ability is strong. I think you're right. I mean, I think he's going to be, if he was healthy, he might be a 3rd round guy if he was, but now he's probably more in the 5th, 6th range, but I think he's still a draft pick.
Yeah, and it's more than just the ACL. He had the injury the year before, and you know how it is down there. I'm sure they're like, over analyzing X-rays and injury histories and all that you have to overcome. But I'll maintain that. I think, like you said, if somebody pulls the trigger on a draft and stash, he could definitely pay dividends on the other end of that thing.
Yeah, and it's always interesting when you start to get in a draft strategy, and you got to analyze the cap when you do that. But if you're a team that's, let's say you've got 47 guys that on your roster right now that you feel like are probably going to make it, or roughly, and then you've got your upper level draft picks and maybe a signed free agent or something, then that's when you take a chance on a guy, because it's like, yeah, that spot's not going to hurt us, and if he's good, then we can maybe make him, see if he can make it to our practice team, or maybe he makes the roster, or worst case scenario, if he doesn't, then you just don't lose anything. But if you're a team that's cap strapped and you need those draft picks to make the roster, then that's when you go after a Logan Lee. You got a sure thing. You know what you got there. And so, all right, well, we don't have much wiggle room here. We need a defensive lineman who's going to at least go out and line up and hit people. And so let's get Logan Lee, and he may not make the Pro Bowl, he may not even start, but he'll be part of our rotation and he'll play hard. And that's going to be that's the difference between an Eric All and a Luke or Logan Lee this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, it helps these guys too that the success that Iowa products have had in the NFL, they're don't hear about them getting in trouble.
Oh yeah,
hard workers. They develop. They've been developed, and they know how to continue to develop. So that helps all of these guys. Who's left? Is there another guy?
Torrey Taylor.
How could I forget Torrey Taylor?
Yeah.
When do you guys get him?
We get him Saturday.
Okay.
So he's one of the last people that we get, but
any buzz around him down there? I mean, it's so hard with specialists.
It's too early because he won't even be here yet, I don't think. But, I think if there's a team to watch for him, and it's probably Pittsburgh Steelers. They were one of the worst. I have the numbers here somewhere, but they were the worst team when it came to punting last year. They cut their punter, Presley Harvin, and so they're looking for a punter anyway. And
so they have no punter on the roster?
They don't have a punter on the roster. And there's about 5 or 6 teams that are in that, where we need an upgrade here. Mm-hmm. And the Chicago Bears are another one. And there's a handful kind of scattered throughout, or a team may have, we don't need a $4 million punter, or whatever it is. So I think there's, he will be drafted. I would be shocked if he was not drafted. So, and if again, you're a Pittsburgh Steelers team, punting is, we've known it for a while, is winning, and it was a winning strategy for Iowa for the last few years.
And it works well in Pittsburgh's system.
Exactly.
There's a lot of similarities.
Yeah,
in addition to the uniforms.
Right. I mean, he doesn't have to change his color pattern, and he's you look at his just to be able to knock the ball out of bounds in that weather. He's punted in that weather, and it's crazy, and it goes forever. If you get in the playoffs, I mean, you're punting till early January anyway, and he's had horrific, he's had snow games and wind conditions that it wouldn't, so it wouldn't be the worst thing for him to end up in Pittsburgh or Chicago, which could use a punter as well.
We'll have plenty more time to talk about this, Scott, but who else in this class for Iowa that didn't get invited to the Combine are you intrigued by in terms of what the NFL interest might be in them?
I'll start with Joe Evans, because he's kind of like your everyman Iowa player, and I mean like a Parker Hesse type, where what you're going to get with him. And, he's one of the best captains that I think I've ever seen at Iowa. Tough guy. But also, he's a pass rusher, and he's a pretty good one. And he's one that, has had, 20 plus sacks, I think, in his career. I'd have to look at his numbers, but, he's one that I think has a real chance to take that next step. And, I went through the player agent directory just to make sure I wasn't missing anybody. But, I think the pro day is going to be critical for him, and he's going to get some interviews there. And, is he a draft pick or a free agent? I don't know, but he'll go to a team and he'll make it hard to cut. Just be like, man, I hate cutting that guy. Or, definitely he'll be a practice teamer, because that's what you need, is somebody that, hey, you want to, I want somebody to play fullback, and you go, me, some of the others that I'm interested in, I mean, Noah Shannon will finally get a look, in a couple weeks. And Nico Ragaini, that's going to be interesting. I hope he gets at least an invite, a sign. I always hope that they get signed. If they don't do anything, or if they're just cannon fodder in camp, that sucks. But you hate to see them not get a jersey.
Just that experience, right, of being in an NFL camp and getting your chance. I mean, that's pretty valuable.
Yeah, exactly. And then you look at it from let's say an Iowa point of view. What if he makes a team? What an indictment that is for your program in so many ways, which is deserved. But Rusty Feth, Steve Stylianos get looks. I don't know that they will have much of looks, but they got an opportunity. They'll go to pro day, they'll work out and see what happens.
When is pro day? Do you know the date of pro day?
It's the 18th, I think. I want to say it's the day after I think St. Patrick's Day is a Sunday this year, so it's the next day. It's that Monday. A couple other guys, they probably won't. I don't think they'll work out at Iowa, but they are draft eligible. Arlen Bruce and Terry Roberts have signed with agents. I know Arlen Bruce has signed a CFL deal, but I know NFL's remains an opportunity for him. So that's kind of the list. It's smaller than usual this year because of all those guys deciding to come back. But and there would be a bigger list with a Jay Higgins, a Sebastian Castro, and some of those others.
Yeah, Castro would have definitely been there, no doubt in my mind. And Jay as well would have been going home, I think. But
both
those
of
guys,
them,
you'll get to interview them next year when they get down there. So I apologize to folks. We're not going to get into wrestling and baseball this week because this is run kind of long. We weren't anticipating the Caitlin Clark breaking news, and Scott's got a bunch of work to do. I'm sure people want to eat dinner. Anybody who's still watching us at this point, I want to eat dinner.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Appreciate Scott being able to jump on with us here and get this one in this week. I'm glad it worked out for us. What do you got coming up? What do you got content-wise, Scott, that you want to plug here for the folks over there at The Athletic?
Yeah, like I said, I'm writing about Cooper DeJean, or just did and finished that. That's going up, should be about any time. I've also writing other stuff besides Iowa. Like yesterday, I wrote about Michigan, Washington, and Alabama's players and their thoughts on their coaches all leaving in this off season. I thought that was interesting.
I saw you tweet out Tyler Newman's comment too. People can check that out on Scott Feeds. It was not complimentary of Iowa.
No, it certainly was not. Their offense, that they knew exactly what they're doing on every down, and I don't think they needed to employ Connor Stallions to figure it out either.
No.
No. But and then there was publishing tomorrow is a story I've worked on for a long time, and that is how the current women's basketball team and the popularity of it has roots in the with 6-on-6 basketball.
Nice.
And so I'm touching on the 6-on-6 era and how it kind of propelled that interest. And I talked to some former 6-on-6 players, but dealing with the history, the way that girls basketball in the state of Iowa was so beloved way before Title IX, that kind of the residue or whatever of today, is spilled over because of a lot of the women that are at those games are women who played that sport, and they just embrace this team as much as anything. And then it's reciprocated that Caitlin Clark, says it's so neat to hear those stories from the women 30 to 40 years ago and how much they love watching us, out there with these big crowds. And, I spent, one morning with a 69-year-old woman who's in, she played 6-on-6 basketball for a state champion. And she was also attended the Caitlin Clark's Michigan game and just couldn't get over, how excited. I mean, the morning after, she's like changing all the channels and wanting to watch more about it, and just brimming with excitement. And then she has this huge scrapbook of her and when they won the title, and she was like the tournament queen and everything. So it's just really it's really fascinating and such a deep story that I was able to report.
Look forward to reading that. Check that out on The Athletic. I was down at the state tournament earlier this week. Congratulations to the Solon girls, by the way. Congratulations to everybody who's advancing in the tournament down there.
Yeah.
The girls will play top-ranked Esterville Lincoln Central for the state championship in 3A. I believe that's tomorrow or Saturday. Clear Creek plays today as well. So from a local angle, it is a great event, and it is the history there is something to be proud of for Iowans. I think they take great pride in 6-on-6 history and the Iowa girl, right? The history of, the promotion of female athletics in this state through the years.
I went back to the 20s and went through like the register and some of the others, to see what happened. And, the first tournament was in 1920. In 1921, there was a woman named Dorcas Anderson who scored 89 points in the state tournament, which is a record that held for 11 years. Her granddaughter is Jan Jensen, who also played 6-on-6, who's averaged 67 points a game her senior year. In fact, what's interesting is she led the nation in scoring as a high school senior and as a college senior. 6-on-6 and 5-on-5, pretty impressive if you ask me. But by 1925, how things changed, that a lot of people thought that it was wrong that girls were playing sports, and then the Iowa High School Athletic Association they voted to end the girls' state tournament. So then a bunch of smaller state superintendents around the state from small schools said, F you guys, and they formed the girls' athletic union. And then that's what started the tournament the very next year, and it's been going strong since. And then, of course, you can't write any kind of history about the 6-on-6 tournament or girls' sports in the state of Iowa without mentioning Wayne Cooley and how he did it. I mean, the state tournament was broadcast in 9 states. It was sold out, in the 50s, 60s, 70s on up. And you said the Iowa girl, the fact in halftime they had pageants and they had different events, plays almost, and just to celebrate the Iowa girl. And like Jan had said, it's like, you knew that it's like a man's world, but you never felt it. You felt like you were on top of the world when you were at the state tournament at Iowa. And it's just, it is something to be proud of. And I was glad that I could kind of tie it all together, because it's a really neat story.
Representation is important, and look forward to reading that from you, Scott. I appreciate you doing this for us. I appreciate everybody for listening to the podcast and adjusting the schedules around us. And we should be back regular time next week. And if something changes, I will let everybody know. But thank you for listening. Thank you to our sponsors. Have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the game on Sunday at Carver if you're going, and celebrate Caitlin Clark. And we'll talk to you next week. Say goodbye, Scott.
Bye, Scott.